Hi kiddos, today I'm going to go through how to write a rhetorical analysis essay. It's a little different than what you're used to, which is primarily argument writing. A rhetorical analysis is writing about writing. So let's take a look. The rhetorical analysis is one of the three essays in the AP language exam. The other two are argument pieces, which again is what you're used to writing. The rhetorical analysis is very different. Instead of making an argument about a topic and then providing evidence, you're going to be looking at someone else's argument, decipher what their purpose was within that argument, and then analyze how they conveyed that argument. In other words, what strategies did they use in order to get their purpose across to a specific audience? The typical construction of a rhetorical analysis is 4 or 5 paragraphs, especially in the timed right setting. In a timed right, the introductions and conclusions are less important. In fact, you can still get a high score on the AP exam with just a really strong thesis statement for the introduction. Very few conclusions are good enough to raise your score anyway, so those can be minimal too. But the body paragraphs are where most of the analysis will come in and will be, along with your strong thesis statement, the most important part of the essay. For the body paragraphs, most of you will follow the path on the left, which is by strategy. This simply means that after you have determined the author's purpose, which is sometimes given to you in the AP prompt, you need to determine 2 or 3 key strategies that help the author convey that purpose. We'll go into this in more detail later, but just to give you an idea, some popular strategies include emotional and logical appeal, repetition of a particular phrase that connects to the main claim of the piece, a particular type of diction or figurative language. The rhetorical strategies that you'll find in a piece are seemingly endless. The trick is to hone in on the strategies that help you prove your point, that the author used those strategies to prove his or her point. The other organizational technique for this type of essay, seen on the right, is to use the organizational patterns that the author uses to convey his or her purpose. This usually deals with a shift in tone. So, say a speaker starts off with an angry tone about a social injustice, but then shifts to one of hope for the future. Then you're left with giving examples of words or ideas that show that tone, leading into how that tone or the tone shift in subsequent paragraphs help the author convey his or her purpose. We'll go through both of these in a later presentation in more detail, but first let's focus on what goes into the introduction, particularly in a process piece. So if you're taking the AP test, you have about 40 minutes to write each essay. In fact, as previously stated, you can get away with just writing a strong thesis statement for your introduction, and then you can move on. However, there is a fairly simple template that you can use to get a rather full introduction down. It will also ensure that you have thought about the key parts of the piece, which will strengthen your understanding of the piece and therefore strengthen your analysis. If you're doing the essay as a process piece, one in which you have lots of time to write, this is definitely a strategy you want to take advantage of because you'll need a more full introduction. The basic idea is to write your introduction in an inverse triangle. So start big and then taper down to the specifics. You'll want to start your essay by introducing the author and the title of the piece that you're analyzing, and then you'll gather some more specific details about the piece. In a minute, I'll talk about using SOAPStone to gather this contextual information to make it easier on you. SOAPStone is an acronym, and the key letter for this essay is the P, which is purpose. The AP exam will sometimes give you the purpose that they want you to concentrate on, but whether it's given to you or not, you'll need to make sure that the purpose is in your introduction, most likely right before your thesis or even as part of your thesis. Your thesis will usually include a claim about which strategies the author employed in order to convey his purpose. SOAPStone is an organizational technique to help you gather the basic contextual pieces of an argument. Let's take a look at what the acronym stands for. You'll want to memorize this so that you can use it during a timed essay. I'll quickly go through these so that I don't spend too much time just reading a slide to you, and then I'll show you an example of each one from Old Major's speech in Animal Farm. So the S stands for subject. What is the author's claim? Sometimes the title will help you kind of figure this out, but you do want to think beyond the title. What is it really about? O is for occasion. What event sparked the writing of this piece? What's the context? A is for audience. For whom was this piece intended? This is a difficult one, but consider the following to maybe kind of help you narrow it down. We have gender, ethnicity, age, level of education, occupation, station in life. You'll want to be specific, but not too specific. This is actually a pretty difficult one. You usually need to figure out this through the words that they use or the topic, etc. P is for purpose. Again, this is the most important one for a rhetorical analysis. What does the author want the audience to do or feel afterwards? S is for speaker. That's usually an easy one and usually one that's given to you based on the passage. What information can you gather? Do they have any biases? How do they build trust with the audience? So you can get a little bit more than simply the name of the speaker. And then tone is what words can you use to describe the tone of the piece. This slide will assume that you've read Old Major's dream speech in chapter 1 of George Orwell's Animal Farm. If you haven't read it yet, I recommend pausing this and giving it a quick read. It's beyond copyright, so the full text is online. Now, in order to effectively fill out a soapstone, you need to have read the piece in its entirety, and you'll obviously want to do that when you're taking the AP exam as well. Here is an example paragraph that incorporates the soapstone strategies. We have, in a late night secret meeting of the animals in George Orwell's Animal Farm, Old Major, a wise old boar, shares a dream he had with the rest of the animals on the farm. After his many years of seeing the suffering of his fellow animals, he asserts that humans are the cause of all animals' misery on the farm. In this inspiring speech to younger, less intelligent animals, his primary purpose is to convince the animals that they must rebel. Note that soapstone strategies can be mixed and matched into any order. So let's take a look at each soapstone piece in this paragraph. So observe that although subject starts the soapstone, it does not start this paragraph. Also notice that the subject is different than the purpose. The subject of the piece, in this case, humans are the cause of all animals' misery on the farm, is what Old Major's speech is about. If the piece has a title, this can often help you steer you in the right direction. But be sure to look for what the main argument is in the piece. That will be your subject. Also note that the subject in this paragraph is preceded by a rhetorically accurate verb followed by the word that. Rhetorically accurate verbs vary for an author's claim. In this case, the author asserts. Authors can also question or argue or advocate or suggest or refute. The list goes on. In fact, you can just Google rhetorically accurate verbs and there will be several lists that can help you. After finding the best verb for your piece, you then need to follow the rhetorically accurate verb with the word that, so that you're forced to follow it with a complete clause with both a subject and another verb. It's important that the author's subject is a claim like humans are the cause of all animals' misery on the farm, as opposed to simply Old Major's speech is about the animals' misery. You need to state what the primary claim is, not just the topic of the piece. What is the main argument that the author is making? Next is occasion. For this, you need to ask yourself, did a particular event spark the writing of the piece? Is there an historical context that would help me and others understand the purpose of the speech more? What was going on in the midst of this piece? In this case, we are told that Old Major has called the animals in for a secret late night meeting to talk about a dream he had. Through the passage, we're also given the context that Old Major has lived a long life and has seen Jones and his men mistreat the animals. It's possible that you may need to draw on your background knowledge of what was going on during the time and place of the piece. You may even need to do a short amount of research if you aren't well versed in that particular setting, if it's not just given to you like it was to us in Animal Farm. Audience is often one of the more difficult portions of Soapstone to figure out. In Animal Farm, it's given to us. His audience is the other animals on the farm. We're also told that most of them are younger than he is, and throughout the context of the entire novel, that most of them are less intelligent than he is. Like I said, though, figuring out audience is often a difficult task. In the AP exam, the College Board will sometimes give you at least a clue to who the audience is, so be sure to read the introductory information. If nothing is given to you, though, you'll need to infer who the audience is. Whatever you do, don't say everyone. There is no piece of writing that I can think of that is truly meant for everyone, not even Dr. Seuss, who is beloved by my younger self and my current less younger self. Think of Animal Farm. When it was first published, it was mistakenly placed in the children's section of bookstores. That's because of its fable like structure and easy to read diction. However, it's a satire for the Russian Revolution. It shows the violent slaughter of innocent animals, and it has a not so happy ending. Children are not the primary audience. But who is the primary audience for Animal Farm? Who did Orwell have in mind when he wrote it? That's the question you would have to answer if you were writing a rhetorical analysis on George Orwell's purpose of including Old Major's speech in Animal Farm, or even a rhetorical analysis of the entire novel. As I stated before, purpose is the most important part of Soapstone for a rhetorical analysis essay. In fact, it's so important that the AP exam will sometimes forego having you determine what the purpose is, and they'll just give it to you. The prompt will sound something more like, what strategies did Old Major use in order to convince the other animals on the farm to rebel? If the purpose is not given to you, though, the easiest way to determine an author's purpose is to answer this question. What does the author want his or her audience to do or feel after reading or hearing this piece? The answer to that question is the author's purpose. And in this case, Old Major's primary purpose was to convince the animals that they must rebel. Determining the speaker is usually easy. However, if you can add something like a positive phrase that helps with the ethos of the speaker, that usually helps to elevate your own analysis. So, for example, here I said that the speaker was Old Major, but adding the positive phrase, a wise old boar, helps to show his credibility as a speaker for his audience. You can do this even with just a quick visit to Wikipedia if it's a process piece, or if it's a timed write. If the piece is from, say, a magazine, you can use the appositive phrase so and so, a journalist from such and such magazine. Note that I also added his many years to repeat the idea that he is older, which emphasizes his experience, which will help to emphasize his credibility. Tone is also an important piece of a rhetorical analysis. It helps you, the analyst, determine who the audience is, and it helps the audience make an emotional connection to the speaker and his or her ideas, which in turn will help your analysis. Start with the question, is this primarily a positive or negative piece? And then just narrow the word to accurately fit the tone of the piece from there. Keep in mind that the author may very purposely shift tones throughout the speech. If he or she does this, then that could be the basis for organizing your entire essay, which is nice. Now, this slide shows you all of the soapstone strategies that we just went through. Again, note that they can be mixed and matched into any order. The soapstone strategy is meant to help you, not to tie you down or make your writing more difficult. If something doesn't fit, don't use it. If you need to add something else for it to make sense to your audience, then add it. Okay, that's it for the majority of the introductory paragraph. Everything, in fact, except for the thesis statement, which needs its own presentation. Next, we'll discuss how to find strategies that the author uses, how to determine which strategies to use for your essay, and then how to construct a strong thesis for a rhetorical analysis. Thanks, and good luck.